Good morning, everyone. Thank you to Dean Parr for including me in this talk. So many people jokingly refer to Dallas as a city of plans on the shelf, and we do have too many to count, but it wasn't until 2006 that Dallas adopted its first citywide comprehensive plan. It was called Forward Dallas. Over the past 13 years, Forward Dallas has been used to inform every land use decision throughout the city. Of course, we all know that no zoning decisions are ever made in a vacuum, and we must take into account neighborhood concerns, precedents in the area, sometimes crime, and always traffic in every zoning case. So when Forward Dallas was crafted, they included the voices of thousands of residents of all ages and parts of town. They also included consideration of past plans that were citywide and neighborhood-based. There were three primary values adopted. First, the economy is thriving with diverse businesses growing and people working. Second, people feel safe where they live, work, and play. Third, the city's natural resources are conserved and protected for current and future generations. I would argue that the first value, a thriving economy, is fulfilled. And though there is much talk about crime in Dallas and a growing feeling of lack of safety, statistically, Dallas has some of the lowest crime rates in the country. But for the purposes of today's discussion, I would like to talk about the third value, our natural resources. The voice not at the table throughout the entire planning process was the watershed system. We talk about the Great Trinity Forest, the Trinity River, but never the system, and that's our challenge. In the upcoming Dallas City budget, there's a request for an update of Forward Dallas. If our City Council agrees, we will have the opportunity to craft a plan that will shape the future of Dallas for years to come. We will address land development policy in the context of the recommendations of this plan. The key focus of the Forward Dallas update will use scenario evaluation and metrics to understand, educate, and communicate the impacts of land development policy and action on long-term environmental and fiscal sustainability, equity and quality of life, and to engage the community at the neighborhood level in these conversations. In other words, we will hear the voices of the residents, neighborhood representatives, developers, and economic leaders to actually look at specific scenarios for land development changes. I think it's essential that we hear the voice of the watershed as well. So often in Plan Commission hearings, the issues around watershed and overall environmental protection are key, and our decisions have permanent impact, but we don't consider them other than through floodplain identification because of the technical expertise needed to understand the impact. Luckily, we have talented engineers on the city staff who work with developers to protect the watershed systems. Too often, our decisions cause unintended consequences that we never anticipated due to our lack of information as plan commissioners in making the decisions in the first place. So, as a result of that situation, I would like to issue a challenge to the city leaders of Dallas. In the update of Forward Dallas, incorporate environmentally sensitive zones along with commercial, residential, industrial, and other areas that we mark for zoning categories. Just as we have residential proximity slopes to protect residential adjacencies and sidewalk requirements to protect pedestrians, I propose that we include green zones, areas identified as those which need additional consideration in land use decisions before it goes to the engineers and professionals in the permitting department. Allow the Plan Commission and City Council to hear the voice of the land to be heard along with neighbors and developers. We have many tools which would allow us to understand the impact of redevelopment thanks to the Trust for Public Land, the Texas Trees Foundation, and others that we incorporate into the new comprehensive plan. For example, a story map of absorbing and protecting. By absorbing more rainfall, reducing flooding, and recharging drinking water, there are areas in every single council district in Dallas that can be protected, and some areas that will cause us to make decisions about development in new ways, ways we might not today. Last week, I met with an applicant for a major zoning case in Dallas. She explained that an existing huge drainage ditch right in the heart of Dallas would be covered with their development, but it would be fine. That case comes before us. Before that case comes to us in the public hearing, we will be told that we can't consider the public issues regarding that drainage flow. It will be addressed in the engineering department when the vote takes place. The staff expert's job is to make it work after it has approval. Perhaps if we understand the environmental impact of covering the detention ditch, we might help shape the application to be more sensitive to those downstream. This slide shows what I mean. Our development went the exact opposite direction of the current standards for protection. As the city grew from the center outward, we did not build the infrastructure needed to absorb the growth. So the green areas, those closer to the Trinity, and areas where the water will flow, have older drainage infrastructure that may not have the capacity to handle current flood flows. The newer areas, as we move outward, are safer because the water flows away from them and we did build the infrastructure. Yet the impact of the new growth is hurting the older parts of the city even more as we allow for so much more impermeable surfaces. Imagine if we had maps of the watershed that we could use as reference points as we do the thoroughfare plan, bike plan, parks, and trails. Imagine if landscape plans submitted as part of the thousands of planned development districts we have in Dallas included alternatives for runoff besides detention ponds. If we had those tools, then the decisions we make as appointed officials and those of the council as elected officials would be deeper, more nuanced, and I believe will prepare Dallas for a better future. We would be forced to think beyond our own districts and understand the interdependence we have on the resources of each district, causing us to see even more clearly how we are one city. Land use could no longer be considered without environmental impact. Each application would be part of the city as a whole. Dallas has more planned development districts than any city in the country. PDs are customized zoning. Developers often use them as a tool for their specific project because for whatever reason the base zoning will not work for them. Each one has an ask beyond the planned use for that parcel. As such, we have the right and the opportunity to ask something of that developer in return. We often request increased lighting, improved architectural features, wider sidewalks, and pedestrian amenities. We should also ask for reduced runoff through permeable hardscape, alternatives to traditional detention ponds, and cooling of parking lots and plazas through shade structures and other creative solutions to the problems they will be causing. Interestingly, we know that areas that are highly walkable are valued higher financially. I'm sure that properties with beautiful ponds, architecturally creative permeable driveways, green rooftops, and protection from flooding would also be worth more on the market. Asking developers to carry their share of the environmental impact is not unreasonable. We just need to ask. Everyone will benefit, even the banks. I want to close by sharing a story. It is a Jewish custom to look for a connection with our work to Bible study. In preparation for this talk, I asked my rabbi why God chose a flood to destroy the people in the story of Noah and the ark rather than drought or disease or something else. He told me that in the Jewish tradition, water is a blessing, but as with every blessing, if not used properly, it can become a curse. Every blessing needs proper context and use. He told me that water needs a vessel, whether it be a glass for drinking or land to be nourished. When there is no vessel, as in the case of Noah's flood, or when we take away all the places for our rainwater to flow, those in its path will suffer. Our is to make sure that no one suffers by respecting the need for water to be absorbed and protected. Thank you.